My name is Wayne Ng. I centered my summer vacation around this event. I'm actually from Ottawa, no heckling, but I grew up in Toronto. Now you can heckle. I'm honored to be here as an advisor of the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop and as an author whose own work has been shaped by questions of family, identity, and belonging. So LiterASIAN has always been more than a literary festival for me. I came in 22 for my very first one. It has spawned into Toronto and now Ottawa, thanks to Alan's generous support and foresight. Every May in Toronto and now every September in Ottawa. Loads of fun. Please do come down if you're in the area. These are gathering places where Asian Canadian voices are heard, celebrated, and remembered. It continues the important work of building literary community, supporting emerging and established writers, and making room for stories that have too often been left to the margins. This season is part of that larger conversation. It invites us to think about the histories we inherit and the stories we choose to tell, and the ways the literature can help us bridge generations, communities, and lived expressions and experiences. On behalf of ACWW, I want to thank our speakers, our organizers, our indispensable volunteers, and you, the community, for coming out and supporting Asian Canadian storytelling. So I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's session, Tariq Malik. Tariq is a Vancouver-based Desi-Poc author whose work spans poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and visual arts. Born in Pakistan, Punjab, he came to Canada after surviving 3 wars, 2 migrations, and decades working in Kuwait. He's paid his dues. His writing explores displacement, post-colonial memory, language, and belonging, reframing Vancouver and the Pacific Northwest through the lens of Punjab's histories and global migration. He's the author of Rain Songs of Koti, Chanting Denied Stories, Exit Wounds, and Blood of Stone, and contributed to unmooring the Komagatu Maru, a former writer-in-residence at the historic Joy Kagawa House, where I met him. He lives in downtown Vancouver. It's my pleasure to see Tariq again. Come on up.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for that excellent introduction. We are gathered here to meet 2 remarkable authors who have written about healing through compassion and lessons of survival and good health. Their extraordinary work both address the same themes, which is healing through compassion. And it's my privilege to be interviewing both of them today. Keiko, would it be okay if we go with Kagan first? Okay, thank you. So Kagan's work that we are focusing on today, Surviving Samsara. So an introduction to Kagan. Kagan Go is a Vancouver-based Chinese-Canadian multidisciplinary artist whose work spans memoir, poetry, playwriting, filmmaking, and mental health advocacy. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder at age 23 in 1993, he discovered the transformative power of written word as a path to understanding and healing. What began as self-therapy evolved into a powerful artistic voice that has made him a prominent figure in Vancouver's spoken word scene, where peers affectionately call him the bipolar poet laureate. Through spoken word performances, theatrical work, and published writing, he delves fearlessly into themes of mental illness, recovery, and self-acceptance, advocating for the validation of all emotional experiences as essential phases of the healing journey. His mission to raise awareness of mental health issues and dismantle the stigma surrounding mental illness. His published works include Who Let in the Sky, Select Books 2012, a poetic memoir exploring his relationship with his father, and Surviving Samsara, Caitlin Press, 2021, which chronicles his journey with bipolar disorder, was shortlisted for the 2022 Singapore Literature Prize in Creative Nonfiction. Currently, Kagan is adapting Surviving Samsara into a delicate imbalance, a dramatic episodic television series that continues his commitment to breaking the silence around mental illness through powerful storytelling. And I'm also honored that all three of us are authors first published by Caitlin Press. So we share publishers also. So Kagan, I would suggest that you read a small passage for us to give us the flavor of your writing, and then we shall get into questions and answers. But before we proceed, I have to make a note here that Steffi, who was scheduled to be here as the third author, is unwell and was not able to join us. So in spirit, let's say that she's included here. Kagan, please. Do you want to provide some context? Yeah.
Thank you, Tariq, for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to read the very first. It was initially a poem, a narrative poem that I wrote over 30 years ago, and I performed it at a poetry slam, and it's called Joy. July 1st, 1990. I'm at a house party in Ottawa when I met a woman named Joy. I said, "It's a joy to meet you, Joy." She beams at me and says, "I'm manic depressive." The conversation ends before it really began. Not knowing what to say, I make an excuse. I have to call my girlfriend. A lie. I avoid her all night, staying upstairs while she waits below, lost in the party. She reminds me of a dog I once had when I was 8 years old. He was always happy to see me, jumping up and licking my face. Overwhelmed by his affections, I fled upstairs, afraid to come down. Eventually, my mother lost her patience. "Okay, we'll give him away to the SPCA." She made me accompany her. I carried the dog in my arms. He looked at me with the saddest eyes, wavering on the brink of tears. He spoke to me, "Don't leave me." When we arrived at the SPCA, I said, "Mom, I changed my mind. I want to keep him." "No. After all the trouble you've caused me, dragging me all the way here, you don't deserve a dog." This is how I would come to feel every time I was led back to the psych ward, an obedient dog crying to God, "Don't leave me." So that's dedicated to Sheffy. I'm sorry she's not here. I was really looking forward to meeting her, and I have bought her first book of poetry, which is called Notes from the Ward, which kind of really blew me out of the water. I could really identify with her work as someone living with bipolar mood disorder as well. So I dedicate this reading and this panel discussion and my participation to both Keiko, yourself, Tarek, and everyone here, and especially Steffi.
Do you want to read?
Yes. This one is dedicated to my father. It's called Inukshuk. July 1996. As I languish in my bedroom downstairs, Dad wrestles with his own demons upstairs. Major depression takes hold of him. I rouse myself from bed to accompany him to St. Paul's, where he will receive electroconvulsive therapy. Together, we walk down the antiseptic fluorescent-lit corridors I walked on my own as a patient months earlier. Today, we keep each other company as we wander through the battlefield of our fractured minds. I feel him tremble at a pace unlike the steady shakes caused by his Parkinson's. Sensing my concern, he reassures me that treatment will help him. It's not as barbaric as the movies make it out to be, he says unconvincingly. I wait for him in a puke-purple room on a sticky plastic seat. I wait too long. Eventually, a doctor brings him to me. You had one hell of an impressive convulsion, he compliments Dad. I look at his frail body standing before me, finding it difficult to believe that moments before he was strapped down, teeth gritting the bit hard so he would not bite off his tongue. 1,000 kilowatts of electricity jolted through his 40-watt body. Afterwards, Dad and I walk in silence down Davy Street toward English Bay. His body is weak and our minds are tired. The bay holds the mist tight. We approach the Inukshuk Monument, granite slabs of rock arranged to form a mighty statue of a man, a beacon of hope to those who are lost in the vast, featureless tundra. It towers over us, arms reaching out to embrace the sea like a vast father. The sky breaks, and the wind and rain pelt the Inukshuk, my father and me. I wonder, how much pain can a person endure? Dad, I say, you are not alone.
Wow, that is something. I love the way you express and come up with these expressions like 1,000 kilowatts of electricity jolted through his 40-watt body. So where did this 40-watt come from? Did you have to research it?
It's a metaphor that was in my mind's eye. It was kind of burned into the right of my mind's eye when I thought of my father going through it, when I accompanied her for ECT, electroconvulsive therapy.
Yeah.
And I just thought like in a tremendous, like a lightning bolt from God striking him down.
Wow, it's a very vivid image. And the whole book, as I was reading it, it's like you read these pages and you think you're reading in the dark and they're being lit by lightning. You're reading these pages by lightning flashes in which your writing just sparkles. You write again and again of being placed in a chemical straitjacket, the drift of antipsychotics. And then there's a point at which you write about the knife of separation. There's another one, I can't slow down my thoughts. My mind is speeding through all the red lights of reason. So this seems to come almost spontaneously natural to you. And I'm glad you were able to convey this to us through your book. And while reading it, I constantly felt your conscious decision to write in first person present. That whatever he writes is now. There is very little backstory or projecting onto the future. You're writing as if it's happening. And that's why, due to the rawness of your writing, the reader feels that he's holding your hand and taking you through this, that see what I'm going through and where will it lead me? We are lost with you.
Yeah.
And we find redemption with you.
I wrote it in first person present tense because I wrote it as it was happening, as it was unfolding in my life. I had no designs or ambitions to publish at all. I thought these crazy stories, nobody would relate to them. There would be no audience. They would probably lock me away in the quiet room, and throw away the key, put me in solitary confinement. If anybody read this stuff, the shame and stigma was so strong. But essentially, I wrote in first person present tense because that was what I was living during that time. So it is kind of like a living document. And we dated each chapter of the story to situate it during the time it was happening. And essentially, the way I would describe it is like snapshots. When you go on a holiday, you don't take footage and video and photograph everything. You take specific snapshots of moments which are significant and leave an indelible impression on the retina of your mind's eye. And these were the impressions that I went through, the significant moments, the turning points, etc. So this is kind of a living document of the last 30 years of my life.
Amazing. And I'm grateful that you were able to convey it to us in such vivid prose. Thank you so much. At some point, you also have poetry and ekphrastic poetry throughout the book. And there's one point, really poignant moment in which he writes, she's going, she's going, she's going.
She's
And
going,
repeat
she's going, she's gone. I kind of thought of a judge of a gavel pronouncing a sentence and somebody going, or somebody at an auction going, going, gone, and stamping down or hammering down the gavel to pronounce a sale or a sentence. So I've used that a few times. She's going, she's going, she's gone,
Yes, very vivid. Could you just talk about the title? Because most people are not familiar with Samsara.
Yeah. Samsara is the eternal, how would I put it? The struggle of death, rebirth, and suffering. Samsara is the opposite of nirvana. And there is no hell in Buddhism as far as I know. Maybe there is. But if there was hell, samsara would be it. And I was thinking of the undulating seas of samsara as the roller coaster ride through hypomania, mania, psychosis, and depression. During the first 14 years of my life, I had probably a dozen hospitalizations in the psych ward of St. Paul's Hospital. So my heart really goes out to Steffi. At this time, I can relate and understand viscerally, what someone's journey through bipolar is like, or mental illness. Yeah. So basically, it's a metaphor for the roller coaster ride of the manic, psychotic, and depressive episodes and surviving it. Without giving away too many spoilers, not that I'm saying that the protagonist and myself reaches nirvana, but at the end, basically I talk about thriving in nirvana. Yeah, it has a happy ending. My brother Kasan said when he read the book, he went to combat engineers in Singapore, military service, compulsory national service, and he was a military engineer. And he said he had to defrag his mind after reading the book because it was so, not so much traumatic, but it was so emotionally charged and powerful that he almost had to cleanse his mind. And to defrag a mind means you go to a minefield and purposely detonate the mines to clear the minefield. So that was the metaphor he gave of his experience of reading the book.
Thank you. Um, I love the idea that you had doctor's cure. The name of the doctor is cure, and the other doctor is called barriers. So I hope these are fictional because they're not very effective or apt titles for them.
Well, the real doctor's name, without giving too many, was Kerr, Kerr. And I thought he was like, I thought a play on word is cure. And Dr. Barriers, the spelling is different, but the pronunciation is exactly the same. So,
That is a clever move. And then there is Dr. Cure. You say that he's converting you to the religion of psychiatry. So there is this conversion constantly happening throughout the book. And in his report, Dr. Cure writes, he must have been a poet. He writes, the patient has a look of a bohemian artist. That is a medical report. It's the look of a bohemian artist.
I had another psychiatrist when I told him that my meds were making me anxious and nervous, and I was jittery, and I had butterflies in my stomach. I read in his medical report, which I got access to, that he couldn't take a metaphor, and he took it literally. In his report it says the patient hallucinates that he has butterflies in the stomach. So
Okay, and then the final question I had was somewhere in the book, I'm not going to give away anything, Julia enters your life. And we have Julia's presence here amongst us. Could you talk about that moment?
yeah, well, Julia, the book is not an easy book to read, but it does have a happy ending, thankfully. I kind of talk about Julia is the most important person in my life. She's the love of my life, and my destiny soulmate. Essentially, there was life before Julia and life during Julia, and life with Julia is far better than exponentially beyond measure, beyond my wildest dreams. The way I describe it is like love makes the impossible possible. And my parents, when they were about to pass away, were so scared that I would fall through the cracks and end up on the streets or homeless. The most they expected or hoped for and dreamed is that I would get into supported housing at a place like the Coast Foundation or the Cattle Friendship Society, and just live in supported housing and live on disability. But to make a long story short, when I recovered sufficiently, I ended up getting a practicum at the Cattle Friendship Society, where I used to be a client getting $1 meal for several years, and I wanted to give back to the community. And I ended up working there for 16 years, and I've been working all these years, and we've got a beautiful home. I've got a wonderful wife. Raymond Carver once said in a poem called Gravy, when he was facing his mortality with terminal cancer, he said, I was a drunk for most of my life, but I sobered up and found love, the love of my life. And the last 11 years have been gravy, pure gravy, and don't you forget it. And this is the way I feel about my life with Julia, that it's pure gravy.
Thank you. I would like to end this discussion on this note of love and dedication. Thank you so much, Kagan. It's been wonderful talking to you. And by the way, Kagan also calls himself God's glorified secretary. There's a chapter in there. Okay, so
Taking dictation from the divine. I'm a scribe.
Thank you. Okay, so we come to Keiko Honda. Dr. Keiko Honda, who's also a personal friend, I'm proud to be interviewing her because this is, I think, the third stage we have done this. So, and I've read her work in several, all her books, so digging deeper and deeper. Dr. Keiko Honda is an epidemiologist, a writer, and a founder of the Vancouver Arts Colloquium Society. She holds a PhD in public health from NYU and worked as a cancer epidemiologist at Columbia University. At age 40, she began using a wheelchair permanently, an experience that redirected her work towards social connection and community health. In Vancouver, she transformed her home into a cultural salon, a space for artists and intergenerational dialogue. Work that earned her the City of Vancouver's 2014 Remarkable Woman Award and the King Charles III Coronation Medal in 2025. She teaches aesthetics of co-creation and art-based problem solving at SFU's continuing studies. Her writing includes the memoirs Accidental Blooms, Caitlin Press, and Hidden Flowers, Heritage House, 2025, both. She lives in Vancouver where she paints in watercolors and continues her salon traditions. Born and raised in Japan, she brings a cross-cultural perspective to her work, bridging Japanese and Canadian literary traditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq, for the lovely introduction. Well, being described as a writer still catches me off guard. I came to writing pretty late in my life, so the label still I'm getting used to wearing it. A little background before I read. This book picked up from where my first memoir, Accidental Blooms, left off. At the moment, my teenage daughter, Maya, was preparing to leave for university. And the quiet fear I carried, many parents know, losing her to her own future. And I wrote this book in real time, a reflection happening in motion from inside the not yet knowing. The excerpt I'm about to read comes from the first chapter called The Dawn of a New Season, and also from a section called Breaking an Isolated System. I borrowed this term from physics, second law of thermodynamics. You know, the closed system is sealed off. No energy comes in, none out. That's exactly what this power wheelchair is. You know, whatever you get in the battery is all you get. Okay, so, and then this takes place in Toronto, where I'd gone to send my daughter off. And the few final days of mother-daughter bonding or time before her whole new year began. And partway through my trip, my power chair failed. So I got stuck with a lentil chair. The road is long. The new chair is so big that my feet dangle in my air every time I travel over a bump and barely touch the footrest, which I stop. The thin seat cushion only adds to my discomfort and pain. There are moments of despair and exhaustion, but I'm as determined as I ever been. And we do manage to visit all the places we had jointly planned before our trip, including the campus, AGO, the Rome, Gardiner Museum, Chinatown, Kensington and St. Lawrence markets, and some local bookstores, and several well-recommended ethnic restaurants. Every block we traverse increases our shared knowledge of this city and help us bond with it and with each other. And this keeps pulling me from place to place. Visiting a museum is the most extraordinary part of the trip. Our final last day, we finally visit a Spadea Museum, which sits perched atop a ravine overlooking Toronto. We ascend the steep slope from the last bus stop. The view is unforgettable. The historic mansion tour is captivating. In the adjacent garden, we discover a peaceful spot shaded by a large old tree where last cicada of the season fill the warm air with their mating songs. The sweet scent of freshly cut grass evokes vivid memory of my 15-year living in New York, with its hazy East Coast summers. We sit in a comfortable silence, but my heart yearns for more conversation as the precious time flies by. Soon, we must head back to our dinner destination. Now, I have to navigate the descent down the steep slope with the unfamiliar wheelchair, which lacks, I discover, a proper braking system. The path is narrow, and so Maya must walk behind me. After some experimentation, I realized that the only way to apply the brake is to use both hands to manually to pull the right side handbrake, a maneuver utterly impossible while also controlling the joystick with that same right hand. Slope is narrow, and on the one side is steep drop overlooking a high traffic road. Every time I stop, the chair automatically starts rolling towards the edge, pulled by gravity, forcing me to quickly reverse its trajectory. After a few zigzag trials and occasional skidding, I finally bring the chair to a diagonal stop. I cried out, gripped by a paralyzing terror of tumbling off the cliff and colliding with the traffic below. The last things I want is to meet untimely end in a preventable accident just before my daughter's semester begins. I can't do this. I will go off the cliff if I try to move forward again. I don't know what to do. My voice is so loud and distressed that passerby on the other side of the street far away cast a suspicious glance in our direction. Mom, please calm down. I'm holding onto the chair from behind. I will pull to give you a counter tension. Trust me, I got this. Are you sure? Really sure? My voice trembled with tears. I've never shown this vulnerable and frantic side of myself to my daughter before. Each step towards the steep 50-meter slope is testament to the trust I place my daughter. She's infusing her energy into my chair, creating a connection that breaks the isolation of the thermodynamic system. Together, we now form a single integrated system and descend the hill with unwavering focus and precision. As I loading along, I find myself recalling many of moments we have shared throughout the years, from her first step as a child to her high school graduation. Every milestone has been shared triumph. I cherish memories of baby Maya sitting on my lap as I maneuver my electrical chair down busy street and to the smiles of strangers. Now, as she guides my chair downhill, it strikes me that we have always been source of support and love for each other. Tears well in my eyes, a mix of residual terror from that steep dissent and from overwhelming gratitude for her. Finally, we reach the bottom of the slope, and I see Maya's familiar face beaming at me with that "see, I told you" expression. Tears comes again as I hug her tightly. My heart still races with adrenaline. She's breathing hard. It is as if we, as a one, have just sprinted around 50-meter track. In that moment, I know that this trip is worth any terror I might experience. Okay.
Wow. Uh, so we who are able can hardly imagine how critical it is for this kind of machinery to function properly, for your life to continue, and how close to the edge you come when the panic, especially the panic, sets in if something malfunctions. And this type of writing is throughout the book, that you write with an urgency to convey your understanding and trying to convey what your life is. I find the whole book brutally honest and candid, which is very rare when in autobiographies. I just have a few points about this particular book as a continuation of your accidental blooms. So where would you place this, and how is it different?
So accidental blooms, I had, let's say, 15 or 20 years of luxury looking back. So I wrote in past tense. Yeah. And then this one, as I mentioned, I wrote in a real time, reflection in action. So it was a little bit challenging because I have to live inside the uncertainty, not only of the pages, but also at the same time, uncertainty of life I'm going through. Yeah.
So the beauty is both these books, like Kagan also, are written in the present tense, and they're constantly pulling you into your life's narrative. That is your life story. So we are privileged to glimpse into your minds, both of you, what's going on. And the health challenges, the constant, which again, able people do not have. Just as Julia was dominated our discussion, or overpowers our discussion of Kagan's work, Maya is present throughout the book. She's the body spirit of the book itself.
Yes.
And could you talk about her for a moment? Yeah. Maya? About Maya?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell us something more about it,
Oh,
about her.
Maya? I don't know. Well, she has her own mind. Well, she's already finished third year UOT studying neuroscience. So when I presented this book, to be honest, I didn't consult with her in advance. So, and she has very strong will. So she said to me, "I'm pretty shocked." I said, "Uh-oh." Yes. But then we had very tender conversation, which mine not to share. But as she has her own mind, and I would say she has also her own relationship to this story. And so I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
And I would just take a few minutes to digress, because in our initial discussions, the movie Perfect Days, Wim Wenders' 2023 movie, Perfect Days, came up, and I would just like you to comment on that, both of you. Why does that movie matter so much to both of you in your art also? Go ahead.
it actually, I wrote extensively that conversation I had with my cousin living in Japan about this film. And when film came out, like you, actually I watched 3 times, one in a theater and twice in a home. And I think this film gave us image and gesture and the Japanese aesthetics, and really the like accumulation of ceremonies of you know what it means to pay attention, attentive life. It's there's so many scenes that I can keep talking about, even go deeper, and this film give us that instead of grasping mind or heart without grasping it, without resolving it, the give us a sense that life is how do you see and feel what's already out there. And there is a certain images, like a certain gesture that he makes, looking up the sky every time he goes out, about the day, or every time he bows gently when he enters the park or near the trees, the subtle gestures. It speaks so much volumes, and you can talk that too.
I love the film Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend seeing it. Without giving away too much spoilers, it's about a Japanese man who lives a very simple, humble, and meek life as a toilet cleaner going around the toilets of Tokyo. Very diligently, with almost like a Zen monk's dedication to the craft of just cleaning something so elemental and necessary, but it's kind of looked down by most of society. And through Wim Wenders' vision and eye, he makes it like an Ozu film, a Yashido Ozu film. And there's a term, maybe you can translate this for me, called Mono no Aware. What's the translation of that?
Well, joy, sadness, delight, everything, grief. There's no one English term, word that can translate mono no aware, but really, it's encompass it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I watched it, I was just so incredible. A friend of mine recently passed away. And on her deathbed, she said to me, lead a simple, humble, and meek life. And, we all know that Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. And oftentimes we mistaken the word meek to mean weak or vulnerable or something deficient. When she explained it to me, it means egoless, without ego, without clinging or striving for ambitions which are extrinsic, like fame, power, fortune, but something intrinsic like compassionate love or unconditional love, gentle love and kindness. And this character encapsulated that. And I'll just quickly finish. The ending, without giving too much away, there's a song. And Julie and I were sitting in the theater. Fifth Avenue was packed for weeks. It was like a sold-out movie theater, and it wasn't a Tuesday. It was a regular day. It was a sleeper hit. And these 4 South Asian young men were singing the song at the end of the credits when she's driving off into the sunset with such gusto and such joy. And I can imagine these young men were identifying this character. They probably did menial work that people looked down on, and they felt that they were seen and witnessed and validated, and that was so empowering.
Thank you, Kagan. So there is a trauma there, and this is the process he is dealing in his own way. Keiko, you also introduced us to several Japanese words that came as a surprise to me, especially the word sankedo. My desk, you write that my desk is becoming increasingly uncluttered.
Oh, yeah. Tsundoku. Yeah.
Yeah. So elaborate on that. What does it mean? What is the practice?
Tsundoku?
Yeah.
Actually, this sounds very hip word, but actually coined in turn of the century, so over 100 years old. But literally, probably we all have this, the book stuck up on the desk, and the book that we haven't read it, but you only read the spine. So yeah, the tsumu is stuck up, and the book is in the, but I reinterpret it as that even we don't read a book, in the true sense, in the presence of the book, it influences us, our presence or state of being. So, yeah.
So what I found literally was piling up of unread books. So I don't know if there's actually a word for this, piling up of unread books or an unfinished life.
Yes.
That's what it was. So I think we should ask the audience if they have any questions. I think thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking part in this.
I have one question for both of you.
Please, go ahead.
I'd like to ask actually about the title of this talk session, Courage to Heal, Courage to Write, because it's been sitting with me. And there is some, I guess, assumption embedded in that. Difficulty is something to push through, something that requires something special bravery to survive. And I'm not sure I believe that, at least in my experience, because the word courage gently or quietly suggests that what we face is so hard or shameful that it takes something extraordinary just to even look at it. And I think that framing may also can build its own kind of barriers, because I know this from the inside. My healing, for example, didn't begin by, well, when I went through a paralysis, my healing didn't begin by pushing hard or trying to stronger or more brave. It began when I got curious, ask myself, what is it really? What does it want me to understand? So if there is any, the courage, for me, it's simply learning to feel and see, what's already out there. Because something, look around in this room, friends, receptive audience, the connection we have and the care for each other's. I mean, these are the things that it's really worth paying attention to as well. So my story is not about overcoming, actually. It's about much smaller, more stranger, more ordinary than any heroic arc allows. I just wanted to add that too. Yeah, what do you think? Thank you for that question. I would say curiosity and research question. After everything, I'm still researcher at heart. There is a subtle difference between asking, how do I solve this now, versus asking, what is the nature of this? Then suddenly your mind paying attention, seeing things, different things. You know what I mean? When I, in my research career, I'm sure some of you do a research too. I learned that understanding the let's say, the architectures or the structure of the problem, then solution, emerge kind of on its own. So ask, like, with this book too, Empty Nest, or anything, yes, I want to solve this, or my loneliness, I want to solve loneliness, but instead of asking, what do I learn from this, or what is the nature of this? That's a good question to ask. I think a curiosity helps me throughout, yeah.
I think everybody's journey is different. Keiko has a different journey from mine. Maybe we can not blame, but Aristotle said all drama or story is based on conflict, and I think Western drama and writing tends to follow that formula. Conflict, drama. And as a dramatist, as a filmmaker, I think I not necessarily follow that formula, but see its pitfalls. That's why I like films like Perfect Days, which are about quiet moments that nothing seems to happen. And I'm finding a different way after having so-called survived samsara to thrive in nirvana. That struggle, I look back on it not with regret, but I honor the journey that I've been on. My journey was different in terms of when I was diagnosed with bipolar mood disorder. I experienced a lot of stigma, prejudice, and discrimination. Whether it was, I felt like I was fighting an invisible enemy. I couldn't locate or find the enemy. It was through insinuating remarks, maybe through a psychiatrist or a nurse or a friend who crosses the street to avoid you because you're depressed and you're a downer. Different attitudes that are very subtle. And I was so angry, so filled with rage and frustration that I turned, but I felt like I was fighting an invisible ghost, a phantom. So I turned that anger inward and became self-hate. And to make a long story short, surviving samsara goes through like 5 stages of grief, of mental illness, whether it's, anger, bargaining, towards acceptance, and I added unconditional self-love, which is really just the beginning for me to be able to love others, like my wife Julia, like my community, my friends, to give back, to get out of my own headspace from trying to survive, and all that trauma and suffering, which I didn't want, but I did experience. But I want to transcend it, and I feel I've moved on from that. And the books that I'm writing now are very different. My go-to.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of you. It's been absolutely an education. Thank you so much for the beautiful.